The silence before the storm. The sky over Caldorafor burned for 3 days. It wasn't the burning of suns or the natural fury of volcanic fire. It was the kind of burning that only weapons of unimaginable precision and cruelty could unleash. The colony's towers of steel and glass, once glittering like jewels in the system's endless twilight, collapsed into oceans of molten slag. Green fields were scythed to ash. The last transmissions from Caldorafor were not screams. They were silence, cut mid-syllable, as if even the airwaves had been smothered. The Valari Empire called it a cleansing. They believed humanity had spread too far, too fast, colonizing the spiral arms with reckless abandon. To them, humanity was a pestilence that needed pruning. Caldorafor was their example, their demonstration of power. What they didn't understand, what they couldn't understand, was that humans did not measure loss in numbers. They measured it in resolve. Admiral Rian Salas stood alone on the observation deck of the UNS Revenant, one of the dreadnoughts still docked within the great shipyards of Titan's orbit. Before him hung the shattered remains of Caldorafor, projected in brutal clarity on the hollow display. Not statistics, not tactical breakdowns, just the truth. 3 million civilians reduced to dust. He was silent for a long time. Silence because words could not carry the weight of what came next. Behind him, the chamber doors whispered open, and Counselor Elara Vey, representative of the United Terran Assembly, stepped in. Her uniform was immaculate, but her face was pale, haunted. "They've crossed a line they can't come back from," she said softly. "They always thought lines only applied to us," Rian murmured. His voice was gravel, sharpened by decades of war. He turned then, his eyes like steel under firelight. "They think this is finished, that they've silenced us." Elara nodded grimly. "And instead, they've awakened the fleet." The fleet. Every human child learned of it in history lectures, whispered half-truths and legends. At the height of the Terran Wars centuries ago, humanity had forged the Colossus Armada, an impossible number of ships, 700,000 in total, hidden away in reserves when peace was signed. For centuries, they'd slumbered across forgotten dockyards, entombed in frozen orbits around dead stars, maintained by autonomous AIs and machine crews. The Valari thought humans had forgotten them, that humanity had become comfortable, complacent, weakened by bureaucracy and peacetime. They thought humanity's strength was only in fragile colonies, not in the legacy that waited in silence. They were wrong. On the Revenant, alarms began to hum as encrypted signals spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Not distress calls, not pleas for aid. Orders. The recall protocol. Machine intelligences slumbering in their orbital vaults stirred for the first time in 300 years. Forgotten shipyards opened like steel flowers. Vast supercarriers powered up their cores, engines igniting like newborn stars. From the asteroid belts of Proxima to the hollow moons of Sigma 12, from the derelict rings of Hadeon to the ice shell of Juno, the old fleet answered the call. And with them awakened the nightmares humanity had promised never to unleash again. Back on the observation deck, Elara whispered, almost to herself, 700,000 ships. They'll never believe it. Rian's lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. They don't need to believe it. They only need to see it coming. The Valari Council Chambers, Core World Zenith. In their gleaming spires of white crystal, the Valari High Council gathered, convinced of their triumph. Lords draped in iridescent robes reclined upon thrones shaped like crescent moons. Their voices were calm, elegant, assured. The human colony burned swiftly, one declared. They are soft. Their fleets are scattered. They will whimper, perhaps send a token protest. They will do nothing, another added, adjusting the golden filigree on his mandibles. They understand survival is obedience. But one among them shifted uneasily. Archseer Valon, old and scarred, leaned forward, his many eyes narrowing. "You do not know them," he rasped. "You mistake their quiet for surrender. I have studied their wars. Their history is not of yielding. It is of fire." The chamber fell into scoffing laughter, but his words lingered, uneasy ghosts among the crystal spires. Back on Titan, the awakening. Dockyard after dockyard came alive in the blackness of space. The UNS Colossus Prime, a leviathan of steel longer than a city, stirred with the hum of reactors. Entire fleets, frigates, destroyers, cruisers, slid from their orbital cradles. Dreadnoughts lit the void with burning engines. One by one, they joined formation around Titan, their hulls etched with ancient scars, weapons humming with power once forbidden. Admiral Salas stood in the command chamber of the Revenant, staring at the tactical display as dots of light multiplied by the thousands. "Status of the Armada?" he asked. 72% online and accelerating," replied Commander Astervale, his second-in-command. "The rest will rendezvous within the week." "Sir." He hesitated. "It's bigger than the stories. It's real." "It was always real," Rian said. His eyes were cold fire. "We kept the truth hidden because the galaxy feared what humanity might become if it remembered." He leaned forward. "Now it remembers." The oath. A transmission went out not to the Valari, but to every human settlement still alive in the Spiral Arms. It was Admiral Salas himself, his face carved in shadow, his voice iron. "They erased Caldora 4, he said. "No grand theatrics, no honeyed words, just truth. 3 million of our kin, silenced as though they were nothing. The Valari believe this was a lesson. They are right, but it will not be a lesson for us." The feed cut to a vision of the Armada gathering, hundreds of thousands of ships burning bright against the abyss, their silhouettes blotting out the stars. It will be a lesson for them, for every world that ever doubted the strength of humanity, for every empire that ever whispered that we were too fragile to endure. You will see vengeance not in whispers, not in shadows, but in fire. 700,000 ships are coming. We will not stop until the Valari Empire learns the cost of underestimating mankind. The message ended. And across the colonies, from the miners of Europa to the children on the station rings of Alpha Centauri, humanity rose as one. Fear gave way to fury. Sorrow gave way to resolve. Aboard the Valari flagship, Orithkel, High Lord Zirin reclined on his throne as reports trickled in. "Human fleets are stirring," said a pale officer. "But their numbers, they are illogical. They claim." "Claim what?" Zirin asked lazily. The officer's voice faltered. 700,000 ships. The chamber erupted in derision. But Zirin froze. His mandibles clicked slowly. "Show me the feed." And when the projection lit the chamber, showing the impossible swarms of human ships forming like a second galaxy within the void, even his blood ran cold. Titan, the calm before launch. On the Revenant, preparations were complete. Crews moved like veins of light within steel arteries. Weapons hummed, shields flared, reactors burned. Commander Aster approached Admiral Salas quietly. "Sir, once we launch, there's no turning back." Rian didn't look at him. His gaze was locked on the endless dark. "There never was turning back, Commander. Not after Caldora. The fire that answers silence." The Armada moved like a living storm. From the frozen rings of Saturn to the asteroid belts of Proxima, the galaxy felt the tremor of its awakening. 700,000 human warships ignited their drives. A tide of steel and fire that stretched across parsecs. Not a fleet, an avalanche. For the first time in centuries, humanity's hidden legacy revealed itself. These were not ships forged in compromise. They were not designed for diplomacy or deterrence. They were the weapons of a species that had once clawed its way up from extinction-level wars, a people who remembered how to fight until only ruins remained. And they were angry. The Council's denial. The Valari Council gathered again in their gleaming spires of zenith. The crystalline chambers shimmered under their sun's light, but unease whispered in every corridor. Reports poured in from the outlying systems. Mining fleets destroyed without warning. Patrol groups erased from sensors in seconds. Entire border outposts falling silent. Still, arrogance blinded them. "They are scattered pirates," one counselor insisted. "A rabble stitched together from myths." "They are ghosts wearing steel," another hissed. "Nothing more." But Archseer Valon, the one who had warned them before, slammed his clawed hand on the table. You fools! You think shadows destroy garrisons? You think phantoms burn entire fleets in a single volley? This is not myth. This is the storm of man. The counselors fell silent at his words. And in the silence, they felt the creeping dread. The humans had not been crushed. They had been waiting. Titan, the command nexus. Aboard the UNS Revenant, Admiral Riansalis stood at the heart of the nexus chamber. The tactical holomaps stretched across the floor, stars glittering as if the galaxy itself had been shrunk into his palm. Every blue dot, human warships. Every red cluster, Valari strongholds. Around him, officers spoke in clipped tones. Outer Rim fleets reporting in. 60,000 strong. Juno Armada assembled. 82,000 ships ready for burn. Sigma 12 reserves online. 200 dreadnoughts fully armed. It was a scale the galaxy had never seen. Commander Aster Vale approached. His face grim but his eyes alight with fire. Orders, sir. Rian gazed into the holographic stars. He remembered Caldora 4, the silence of its death. He remembered the arrogance of the Valari, their belief that humans would kneel. His jaw tightened. Orders. He spoke with iron. We erase their empire, system by system, until the Valari learn the taste of ash. The first clash, Arcani's Rift. The Valari sent their Grand Armada, 50,000 ships, led by their vaunted sunbreakers, vessels the size of continents. They were certain the humans would scatter, certain the galaxy's whispers of 700,000 were a bluff. When they arrived at Arcani's Rift, the truth greeted them. The humans were waiting. 100,000 Terran warships hovered in perfect formation, their hulls like obsidian blades. The Valari's arrogance cracked in that instant, but it was too late. The battle began with silence. Then the humans opened fire. The weapons of humanity. The Valari had never seen such fury. Human ships did not rely on elegant plasma arcs or crystalline beams. They fought with weapons designed for finality. Rail cannons fired slugs at fractions of light speed, tearing Valari vessels apart before their shields registered impact. Swarms of smart missiles curved through the void like serpents, weaving past defenses, drilling into hulls, detonating with surgical precision. And then came the Oblivion Lances, weapons humanity had sworn never to use again. Great beams of antimatter tipped energy that carved through fleets like gods dragging spears across heaven. The Valari fleet broke in hours. 50,000 ships reduced to drifting fire. Survivors screamed across comms for reinforcements, but no reinforcements came. Only silence. Because the humans were already moving to the next system. The message. The galaxy trembled as transmissions spread. Not from the Valari but from humanity. Admiral Salas appeared again, projected in every system where humans had ever been dismissed as weak. You burned Caldora 4, he said, his voice a weapon sharper than any blade. You thought the silence of a colony would be the silence of humanity. But listen well, Valari. Silence is not surrender. Silence is the breath before the fire. Behind him, footage of the Armada filled the feed, hundreds of thousands of ships burning bright, blotting out the stars. 700,000 warships are coming. You will not stop us. You will not reason with us. You will only remember what it means to awaken humanity's wrath. The feed cut, and the galaxy shivered. The march of fire. System after system fell. At Valerian's gate, humans unleashed gravity weapons that crushed enemy fleets into singularities. At Thessal Prime, they scorched orbital platforms with swarms of drones, each carrying the payload of a small star. At Dravik Spine, they shattered entire shipyards, leaving the Valari's future fleets as twisted slag. The Armada moved like an executioner. There was no pause, no hesitation. For every system the Valari had taken from humanity, the humans erased 3 of theirs. Worlds that once sneered at humanity now watched the stars burn and whispered prayers to the Terrans instead of their own gods. Zenith trembles. Within the crystalline spires of the Valari homeworld, panic finally took hold. Reports screamed of defeat after defeat. Their border fleets were gone, their strongholds broken, Their reinforcements never returned. High Lord Zirin, once so calm, now raged. Impossible! They are primitives. They cannot wield such numbers. But Archseer Valon only lowered his gaze. Primitives? They are the species that tamed fire when we still hid in caves. They are the species that fought themselves to near extinction and rose stronger. Did you think such a people would not remember how to end a war? His voice fell like a sentence. The humans are not coming. They are already here. The final descent, Zenith. The Armada arrived in the Zenith system like a black ocean swallowing the stars. 700,000 warships formed a sphere around the Valari homeworld, their engines burning like suns, their weapons humming with restrained apocalypse. The Valari scrambled every ship they had left. 500,000 pulled from every corner of their empire. A desperate stand. The void between the fleets was silent for a heartbeat. Then Admiral Salas's voice carried across the abyss. Caldorafor. That was all he said. The Armada fired. The end of the Valari. It was not a battle. It was annihilation. The humans fought with cold precision. For every Valari volley, 10 human counterstrikes answered. Their dreadnoughts advanced like mountains. Their carriers unleashed waves of drones that blotted out the void. Their lances of antimatter fire carved straight through the Valari flagship, splitting it like glass. The Valari fought desperately, their once mighty ships breaking like paper. But numbers, fury, and history itself stood against them. Hours later, Zenith's orbit was filled with wreckage and flame. Admiral Salas stood on the Revenant's bridge, watching the final stages unfold. His officers waited for his command. "Sir," Commander Astor asked quietly, "what of the planet?" The Valari homeworld glittered below, spires of crystal shining under their sun. Billions lived there. Billions who had cheered the burning of Caldorafor. Rian's jaw clenched. Then he spoke, his voice steady. "Let them live. Let them remember. Let them look to their skies and know what they woke." The silence after the storm. The Armada did not stay. It did not gloat. It left Zenith burning, broken, but alive. Across the galaxy, whispers spread faster than light. The humans had unleashed their hidden fleet. They had shattered the Valari Empire in weeks. But more terrifying than their weapons was their restraint. They could have exterminated Zenith. They didn't. They had chosen to leave a scar. And scars never fade. The return to Sol. The Armada returned to Sol, engines dimming, weapons cooling. For now, the war was over. On the observation deck of the Revenant, Admiral Salas stood once more, gazing at the stars. Alara Vey approached him, her voice soft. "It's done." "No," Rian said, his eyes never leaving the void. "It's never done. They'll whisper our name for millennia. They'll fear the silence of humanity. Because they know now." He turned, his gaze hard as steel. "When we answer with fire." The galaxy had thought humanity was weak, that they could erase a colony without consequence. But now the truth was burned into the stars. Erase one human world, and 700,000 warships will come for you.